saw like a lot of policemen and troops inside the house, and I was like afraid, like they took my house, and like I wasn't believing that they took it. And there was a policeman was standing here, and I told him I want to go inside because this is my house. And he told me, no, you are lying and you are acting and these things. So I told you, I will get in. And I went from my neighbor house and I jumped from
Wall?
the wall, yeah. And I get in. And he saw me. And I was like,
Wait. And so are there still people living
Yeah.
in this side?
not a family, like 7 guys inside.
How old are the guys?
17,
Okay.
18, yeah.
They just come in.
Yeah, they do a lot of bad things. Like they told us bad words and they do bad moves in their bodies. Yeah, they're very bad.
Are they religious?
What?
Are they religious?
No, I don't think so.
No?
No, but not all of them. They always change. That's not the same guys inside the home.
That's what we were talking about. So that sometimes it's not even families. It's
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
like a bunch of young kids.
But they're not permanent. They just come and go.
Like a hotel, I think. Yeah. Whatever he want, like everyone he wants to get in, he can. Like.
I mean, do you have any other questions?
So inside the house, do you have to share like rooms with them?
No. There's a wall.
Divided?
Yeah, divided. There's a wall between us. But they make noise. They knock on the wall in the night and make noise. Internationals sleep here in the tent to like help us and support us. And in the night, settlers throw on them rubbish and these things. It was like awful. This is from here. They took it from here, and we have this for my grandma.
This is their home.
Our home.
Yeah,
They
their
took it.
home.
Yeah.
This is where they live.
And isn't it right? Didn't your family ask the court if they could demolish? this
Yeah,
part?
but they didn't accept it.
Yeah. So that's the
They didn't agree.
another crazy part. Basically, the El Kurd family said, "Okay, fine. If you're saying it's illegal, let us knock down this part, and we'll live in this part." And the court said no, and then moved a family to live in here. Not a family, sorry. Moved Jewish settlers to live in here.
Wait, so why are you allowed to remain in this part, but not in that part?
Because when my dad married my mom, like they have children, they decided to build another house, because we were coming like big family. So he asked for a permission, but they didn't give him one. So he built it, and when he finished building it, the judge from the court, he come and closed the doors, the 2 doors, and took the key with him, and he said that we can't live in it because it's without a permission, but Jewish can live without a permission.
Yeah, doesn't make any sense.
Jewish can do anything, but Arabs not.
When was that? Yeah.
And
Like, was that a long time?
2009, I think.
Oh.
Yes.
Yeah. That's
I think when you look at that also talks about another thing. Like when you look at around numbers, when it's almost impossible for Palestinians to get building permits.
yeah.
And the Israeli state then says, but you built illegally, which of course leaves out the fact that it's almost impossible to get right.
What do you want to happen? What do you want to see happen?
Jewish go out from my land, because this is my house.
I feel like that it's a really small neighborhood. It's like a really not a big place. There are a few, I think, a few hundred families, and out of them, I think there are 28 cases that have, it's either 24 or 28, quote me on the number, that have some stages of eviction processes, whether that's processes in the court, evictions that have already been carried out on 4 of the homes, evictions that are threatened to be carried out in the next year, like on the Shamasne house, or other cases in which sort of the threat of eviction hovers over the house, but the processes are frozen in some stage in the bureaucratic process.
So, the people living in that house aren't a family. They are just like some kids, right?
Yep.
But like, what?
Like,
Why does that make sense? I guess nothing makes sense, but
Were they granted specifically like a permit to be there, or
They're just not
the Jewish families
The Jewish-
who won the court claims then
like
presumably signed over ownership or rental rights to folks affiliated with one of the settler organizations who works in Sheik Jarrah to move Jews into Palestinian houses.
the family that had claim over the land pre-1948.
Exactly.
But does that same family have claim to where the back part of the house is as well?
No. Or their claim wasn't proven sufficient. But again, like we said in the film, there's the potential, there's the threat that Muhammad's family could lose the entire house, right? If they find ways to prove ownership over that section of the property too, or other various technical legal means, which I think are probably not the important thing to get lost in. If you want sort of more research and more information, I could definitely send you links and websites. But I think sometimes actually there's something problematic with getting super caught up in the detail of all the legal processes, because the essence here is that the court treats different populations differently. I think it's also important to remember, like, is that while there is this sort of like religious aspect here, I think it's, there are many ways you can see this as a political conflict and not a religious conflict per se. In that, sure, there are these handful of fanatics who are saying, right, this land is for Jews and Jews only, but they're supported by the municipality, by the police department, by every level of the court system, by international and local NGOs, and sort of a whole range of people that are not necessarily doing this from religious reasons, sort of highlight what we see as injustices related to the occupation and the nonviolent efforts to solve them or better them. And so the efforts here by the protests were to get a sort of a political solution for the families. So on the first and most basic level, to freeze or I think folks would advocate freezing and or canceling all of the remaining eviction orders. Next, and this is sort of like getting to a political level, and it can't happen only through the courts, because the courts have said it's all legal, but on a political level, the people the families whose houses have been stolen should get their houses back. And then finally, it gets onto the sort of the broader political level, which is that Justition doesn't take a sort of a stance on whether we want one state or two states, or whether it's a confederation or a cooperation, but we do say that the occupation, which sort of mandates and is functioning off of and is based off of structural injustice and structural asymmetry between Palestinians and Jews, needs to be ended. By Palestine.
why?
And one checks me. Yeah. And I smile and say shalom to the guy on the way back, and gotta be checked. There are millions of Palestinians who are sort of like trapped in this scenario, even though they're under Israeli law and under Israeli rule. Sorry, not Israeli law, they have access to Israeli law, but they're under Israeli rule without Israeli law. They certainly don't have freedom of movement or access in the territory.
Can make someone feel pretty ill.
But with that, I mean, I think to make the wrapping up case of why this matters, which is just to look at the way in which attention matters. There's a story from Budrus, our film Budrus. We released this film, and the story of Budrus actually took place in 2003. 2003, 2004 were the demonstrations. And at that point, if you would have, this is a media group did this survey, if you would have searched Budrus on the internet, for the most part, you'd get a handful of results, and they would talk about clashes or confrontations or riots or unrest. And following the film, which was released in 2009, the name Budrus and the story of Budrus is now sort of an internationally known thing. You search Budrus and you get over 300,000 Google results, many of them focusing on nonviolence, on women's participation, on strategic civil disobedience, and all of these ways of framing that wouldn't have been were it not for the media discourse, even as the story was the same. The same goes here for Sheik Jarrah, right? If it were not for people paying attention to these stories, people highlighting these stories, sharing the film, sharing articles, meeting with family members, coming to demonstrations, then one can ask what would say to the higher ups in the government 2 weeks ago that this issue is too politically sensitive for them to build a 9-story yeshiva in the middle of the neighborhood.
And so the reason that the protests aren't being held as strong is because it's just been.
So it's like super complicated. I think movements are messy and complicated and change over years, and so this specific part of the movement has gone through all sorts of transformations. Some of it having to do with burnout, some of it having to do with politics, some of it having to do with internal politics, and some of it international politics. But for the most part, the demonstration, which was a major weekly tool of the movement here, is no longer a major weekly tool, and sort of now happens on a more sporadic, case-by-case basis with a sort of the weekly core of consistent vigils still happening.
No, that's because it's sort of normalized.
What do you mean?
I like the situation is just.
That's definitely a potential explanation that like you can only keep up with sort of the steam of a certain tactic for so long, and there's the positive and the negative. The positive side of that is that there haven't been new evictions since 2009, and you know for better and for worse, and for real evictions. On like current evictions are what call the attention of the media and call the attention of activists and call the attention of the international community. And so the fact that there haven't been new evictions is excellent, but I think what we're trying to do as this vision is to make sure the attention doesn't go away just because there wasn't an eviction last week, right? That the story is still what it is, and there's still this like amazing threat hanging over the entire neighborhood. And still families who can't return to their homes, and still the potential that more evictions would happen in the coming months and years. And with the belief that attention and media and press and activism can have the capacity to alter that.